All right, so you want to go deep on Lilith, huh? Well, strap in, because we are diving headfirst into the world of the first wife, the mother of demons.
The ultimate rebel.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking Mesopotamian demons, biblical ambiguities, Jewish legends.
Even some surprising connections to 20th century feminism.
Oh yeah, it's a wild ride. So to help us untangle this this incredible story, we've got our expert with us today.
It's true, Lilith's story, it really is kind of a tapestry woven over centuries. And to understand it, we got to start way before the name Lilith even pops up.
Okay.
We're going all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia and these figures called Lilu.
Lilu.
Now imagine not just one demon, but like a whole category of them,
Oh,
both male and female.
Right.
They were these kind of mischievous figures associated with windstorms.
Chaos.
General chaos, yeah, exactly.
So like the unruly forces of nature, but like with a supernatural twist.
Exactly. And one specific type of Lilu, our Lilu, she's especially intriguing because she targeted men. Almost like a proto-succubus, which kind of foreshadows Lilith's later associations.
Well, that's a connection I never would have made. So how do we get from these Mesopotamian troublemakers to the Lilith we know today?
Well, it's a bit of a linguistic and conceptual puzzle. The term Lilu, it probably got mixed up with Lamashtu, another figure from Mesopotamian myth. Now, she was a goddess,
Okay.
but one specifically associated with dangers to childbirth and motherhood.
Oh, so those primal fears of losing a child or a mother during childbirth?
Exactly.
So even before we get to Lilith, the name, we've got these ancient anxieties swirling around fears that become like a key part of her story later on.
Exactly. And as Lilith's character starts to kind of solidify, those anxieties become even more pronounced. Now, you might be surprised to know that Lilith actually appears in the Bible.
Really?
Yeah, but it's just a single debated mention in Isaiah.
Oh.
Some scholars think it's referring to an owl, others to a specific demon, and still others to a whole class of them.
So even the Bible is leaving room for interpretation when it comes to Lilith.
Absolutely. It's like this blank canvas for later storytellers, allowing them to build on those existing threads and weave in their own interpretations. And that's where Jewish tradition really takes hold of the Lilith narrative.
Okay, so let's dive into the Jewish texts then.
Yeah.
What do they have to say about Lilith?
Well, she pops up a few times in the Talmud, but interestingly enough, not yet as Adam's first wife.
Okay.
We're not at that stage just yet, but we do get these kind of fascinating glimpses into her character.
Okay.
There's this idea that Lilith has long hair as a punishment for Eve's sin.
Whoa, okay.
A stone used to treat pain is named after her, a stillbirth with wings.
Hold on, a stillbirth with wings?
Yeah.
That's both eerie and strangely beautiful.
Isn't it? And then there's this warning against sleeping alone because Lilith might get you.
Okay, now that's just creepy. But it does fit with that whole danger to childbirth thing we were talking about.
Exactly. Taken together, these mentions paint a picture of Lilith as this figure connected to women, childbirth, and those primal fears of the night that kind of echo back to those Mesopotamian Lilu.
Right.
But it's not just texts that review these anxieties. We have these fascinating artifacts called incantation bowls that show us how real the fear of Lilith was in everyday life.
Incantation bowls, I bet our listeners are curious about these.
Yeah.
What do they look like and what do they tell us about Lilith?
So picture this, a shallow clay bowl about the size of your hand covered in Aramaic script. This writing isn't just any scribble, it's a magical formula, an incantation specifically designed to ward off evil spirits.
Okay.
And guess who pops up frequently?
Lilith. So this wasn't just some abstract mythological figure. People were genuinely worried about Lilith, like, interfering with their lives.
Absolutely. And we know people paid to have these bowls made.
Oh, wow.
Which tells us how real this fear was for them. They were literally trying to buy protection from Lilith's influence.
You mentioned something earlier about symbolic divorce papers from Lilith.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
It is. Sometimes these incantation bowls included formulas that acted as like divorce documents, separating the person from Lilith.
Wow.
This kind of gets into the belief in Lilith as a succubus, a seductive demon who preys on men in their sleep, especially those prone to nocturnal emissions, which were thought to be caused by Lilith's influence.
Oh, wow. So even unintentional encounter like a dream could be seen as dangerous contact.
Exactly.
So Lilith was seen as this powerful, pervasive force in people's lives. But we're still missing that key part of the story, Lilith as Adam's first wife.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
That's where the alphabet of Ben Sira enters the scene.
Right.
This text, dating back to somewhere between the 8th and 10th century CE, is what truly solidified the Lilith as Adam's first wife narrative.
All right, so this is where the story we're most familiar with really starts to take shape. What's the gist?
Well, in the alphabet of Ben Sira, God creates Lilith from the same clay as Adam, just like in that earlier midrashic mention of the first Eve, a being created alongside Adam. However, Lilith, being created equal, refuses to be subordinate to him. The text even mentions her refusing to lie beneath Adam during sex.
Oh, wow.
A powerful assertion of equality. When Adam tries to force her, she utters God's ineffable name.
A huge taboo.
Huge taboo, and flees to the Red Sea.
Talk about a rebel from the start. But God's not just going to let her go, right?
You're right. He sends 3 angels,
Okay.
Sinway, Sonsanoi, and Samanjalith, to convince her to return.
Wait, so it's the angels who negotiate with Lilith, not God directly?
Yeah.
That's a fascinating detail. What do you make of that?
It's a subtle but powerful distinction, isn't it? It suggests that Lilith, even as this rebellious figure, still possesses a level of power that commands a certain respect even from divine beings.
Right.
She's not easily dismissed.
So did the angels convince her to come back?
Not a chance. Lilith refuses to return to the Garden of Eden.
Oh.
However, she does make a pact with them.
Okay.
She agrees to spare babies who wear amulets inscribed with the names of those 3 angels.
Ah, so that's where the tradition of those protective amulets we saw in the incantation bowls comes from. It all circles back to those deep-seated anxieties about protecting children.
It's a brilliant piece of myth-making, really. It ties together these anxieties, explains Lilith's association with children, and reinforces her image as this powerful, albeit dangerous figure. It's a story that resonates on so many levels.
But the story doesn't end there, does it? There's more to Lilith's evolution beyond the alphabet of Ben Sira.
Oh, absolutely. We could dedicate a whole other deep dive to those later developments. But to give you a taste,
Hit me with the highlights.
in a text called the Midrash Otayat de Rabbi Akiva, Lilith is so irresistibly drawn to Adam that she actually fathers hordes of demons with him, even against his will. Talk about a power move.
That's a whole other level of agency for Lilith. She's not just a demoness. She's a force of nature, both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And then in Kabbalistic texts like the Zohar, Lilith's role expands even further, becoming tied to these cosmic forces of evil that oppose the divine order. It's a whole other layer of complexity to explore another time.
Definitely sounds like a deep dive for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get lost in Kabbalah, let's fast forward to something a little more recent. The 20th century saw this incredible shift where Lilith went from demon to feminist icon. How did that happen?
It's an amazing transformation. It's a testament to the power of myths to be reinterpreted and adapted to new contexts. A lot of it stems from this magazine called Fittingly Lilith.
Okay.
It was founded in 1976 by a group of Jewish women who wanted to create this feminist publication specifically rooted in Jewish identity and experience.
So they deliberately chose the name Lilith to make a statement.
Absolutely. They saw in Lilith a figure who, despite being demonized in tradition, represented this rebellious strength and this refusal to conform to patriarchal expectations. They reclaimed her narrative, highlighting her defiance of Adam, her refusal to submit her unapologetic ownership of her sexuality. What had once been viewed as negative traits became these powerful symbols of female empowerment.
It's like they took this figure who had been cast aside and said, no, there's power in her story. There's something to admire here.
Exactly, and that shift in perspective had this ripple effect. Lilith starts appearing everywhere: art, literature, music, even pop culture. Even the name Lilith experienced this resurgence in popularity. She's not just a mythological figure anymore, she's part of our cultural lexicon.
That's pretty incredible. From ancient wind demon to the first wife, child stealer succubus, and now a symbol of empowerment. What a journey.
And it's a journey that's still unfolding. Lilith's story continues to evolve as we grapple with these questions of gender power and the meaning of these ancient myths in the modern world.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of dismiss these ancient myths as just stories, right? But there were so much more to the people who told and retold them. You know, they were trying to make sense of this world full of mystery and danger.
Especially the dangers surrounding childbirth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, imagine a world without modern medicine where childbirth was a life or death event for both mother and child.
Exactly.
It's no wonder figures like Lilith emerged to kind of embody those fears.
It makes sense. In a time when infant mortality was tragically common, people sought explanations, ways to grapple with the unexplainable.
Yeah.
And Lilith, with her connection to the night, to the unseen forces that seem to just snatch away life so easily, provided this tangible focus for those anxieties.
So she almost acted as like a scapegoat, a way to explain those tragic things that felt beyond human control.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. But what's even more interesting is that these myths weren't static.
Right.
They evolved reflecting these changing social and cultural norms. Lilith's story is a prime example of that.
Like how she transformed from this purely demonic figure into Adam's first wife, a woman with her own story, her own motivations.
Precisely. And it's not just her backstory that changes.
Oof.
Even her character kind of shifts depending on who's telling the story and when.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give me an example of how Lilith's portrayal differs across different sources.
Okay, so in some texts, she's pure malevolence,
Yeah.
a child-killing demoness who preys on the innocent. But in others, she's more complex. She's still dangerous, yes.
Yeah.
But she's also intelligent, powerful, even seductive.
Like in that Midrash we talked about earlier, where she's so alluring, she has children with Adam against his will.
Right.
That's not your typical demoness story.
Exactly. That story, while unsettling, gives Lilith a level of agency that you rarely see in traditional demonology.
Yeah.
She's not just a monster, she's a force to be reckoned with.
It makes you wonder if beneath the fear, there's a hint of admiration, even respect for her power.
That's a brilliant observation, and it's something that definitely comes through in those 20th century feminist reinterpretations of Lilith.
Right.
They saw her as a symbol of rebellion, but also of strength and self-determination.
It's incredible how they flipped the script, reclaiming a figure who had been demonized for centuries.
It speaks to the enduring power of myths to be reimagined and reinterpreted to fit these new challenges and perspectives.
Yeah.
Lilith's story reminds us that these ancient narratives aren't just relics of the past. They can offer insights and inspiration for the present.
So for our listener who might be thinking, okay, this is all fascinating, but how does it relate to me? What's the key takeaway here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that myths are never just about the past. They reflect our own anxieties, our values, and struggles.
Okay.
Lilith's story in particular offers this lens through which we can examine our evolving relationship with femininity, power, and the very idea of what it means to be human.
That's a great point. So instead of seeing Lilith as just this scary demoness, we can view her as like a reflection of our own cultural and personal journeys.
Exactly. These deep dives aren't just about learning facts.
Right.
They're about making connections, those aha moments that illuminate something new about ourselves and our place in the grand scheme of things.
I love that. It's like we're uncovering these hidden layers of meaning,
Yeah.
both in the myth themselves and within ourselves. So if you're feeling drawn to Lilith's story, don't hesitate to explore it further. Read the texts, look at the art, listen to the music. You might be surprised at what you discover about Lilith, but also about yourself.
And keep an eye out for those owls.
Oh yeah.
They might be whispering ancient secrets about Lilith on the wind.
A little mystery? Never hurt anyone? You know, one thing that often gets overlooked in these discussions of Lilith is her connection to nature.
That's an excellent point. It's subtle,
Yeah.
but it's definitely there. She's associated with the wilderness of the desert, the darkness of the night, the untamed forces of the natural world.
Remember how she flees to the Red Sea in the alphabet of Ben Sira?
Oh, yeah?
Water is often seen as like a symbol of the feminine, of primordial chaos, of that raw, untamed energy that exists beyond human control.
Exactly. It's like she embodies both the beauty and the danger of the natural world.
Right.
The life-giving and the life-taking aspects of nature.
It's a duality that's mirrored in so many cultures where women have been traditionally seen as closer to nature than men.
Absolutely. They're the ones who give birth, who nurture, who tend to the earth.
Right.
There's this deep symbolic connection that's both celebrated and feared.
And in Lilith's story, that connection gets twisted and turned.
Yeah.
She's a mother,
Uh-huh.
but a mother of demons. She's powerful, but her power is often viewed as destructive.
Right.
It's like she represents the untamed aspects of nature that can both nurture and destroy.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's that duality, that complexity that makes Lilith such a fascinating figure.
Yeah.
She challenges our neat categories and definitions.
Right.
Forcing us to confront the messy contradictions within ourselves and the world around us.
It's like she's holding up a mirror, reflecting back all the things that we try to simplify, to categorize, to control.
That's a brilliant analogy. And it circles back to what we were saying earlier about myths reflecting our own internal landscapes. Lilith's story might be ancient,
Yeah.
but it speaks to something very deep and very human within us.
So what does that mean for us today? How can we learn from Lilith's story, even if we don't believe in literal demons and goddesses?
I think she invites us to embrace the complexity of our own experiences,
Okay.
to acknowledge the shadows within ourselves, the wildness, the anger, the desire for power.
Because those things are part of who we are too, just like they're part of Lilith's story.
Precisely. And trying to suppress them, to deny them, only makes them stronger.
So maybe Lilith's story is a reminder to integrate those aspects of ourselves to find a way to make them work for us rather than against us.
That's a profound insight. It's something that feminist reappropriation of Lilith tapped into.
Yeah.
They took a figure demonized for her strength and sexuality and said, no, these qualities aren't inherently bad. They can be sources of power and liberation.
And that's a message that still resonates today, isn't it? Yeah. We're still grappling with these ideas, redefining what it means to be a woman, to embrace our power, to find our voice in a world that often tells us to be quiet and submissive.
Absolutely. And maybe Lilith, with all her messy contradictions, can be a guide for us on that journey.
So to our listener, if you're feeling lost, confused, or even a little bit rebellious, maybe it's time to spend some time with Lilith. She might just have something to teach you.
And if you hear an owl hooting outside your window late at night, don't be afraid. It might just be Lilith whispering her ancient wisdom on the wind.
Or maybe it's just an owl. But hey, a little mystery keeps life interesting.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about Lilith as this rebellious figure, it's crucial to remember that rebellion can take many forms.
That's so true. It's not always about grand gestures or shouting from the rooftops.
Exactly. Sometimes it's about quieter acts of defiance,
Yeah.
saying no to things that don't align with your values, choosing your own path, even if it means going against the grain.
And Lilith's story is full of those subtle acts of rebellion. From refusing to submit to Adam to making her own pact with the angels. It's about defining your own terms, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable power.
It's those choices, those moments of self-determination that make her such a compelling figure.
Yeah.
She's not just reacting to the world around her, she's actively shaping it, even if it means facing consequences.
And that's a powerful message, especially for women who have often been told to be passive, to conform, to not make waves.
Lilith's story reminds us that we always have a choice. We can choose to conform, or we can choose to carve our own path.
And that choice, that act of rebellion, however small it may seem, can be incredibly powerful.
It can be the spark that ignites change both within ourselves and in the world around us. So if you're feeling stifled, like you're not living up to your full potential, maybe it's time to channel your inner Lilith.
Embrace that rebellious spirit. Find your voice, make your choices, and don't be afraid to break a few rules along the way.
Because sometimes the most powerful magic comes from saying no to the things that hold us back, and yes to the things that set our souls on fire.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe Lilith herself will be cheering you on from the shadows.
Okay, that image is both terrifying and strangely empowering.
Yeah.
I think we've officially entered the realm of Lilith's magic.
And isn't that the beauty of it? She
And-
pushes us to confront those parts of ourselves that we might normally try to hide from the shadows, the wildness, the untamed desires.
And in doing so, she helps us grow, evolve, and become more fully ourselves.
Exactly. It's a journey worth taking, even if it leads us into the darkest corners of our souls.
So to our listener, if you're ready to embark on that journey to explore the depths of your own Lilithian nature, we're here to guide you. Let's dive deep into the shadows together and see what treasures we can unearth. You know, as we've been talking about Lilith, I keep thinking about all the ways she's shown up in art and literature over the centuries.
It is really fascinating, isn't it? All these different interpretations,
Oh, yeah.
from absolutely terrifying and monstrous
Yeah.
to alluring and almost angelic.
Right, and it's interesting to see how those portrayals have changed, along with how we view women and sexuality and feminine power.
Absolutely. In the early days, she's often shown as this grotesque, demonic figure, with claws and wings and a serpent's tail, like trying to embody our deepest fears.
Right, like a warning against untamed female power.
Exactly. But then, as you move into later periods, especially from the Romantic era onward,
Yeah.
she takes on this more alluring, even seductive quality, like artists and writers are seeing her differently.
Yeah, it's like the fear is replaced with fascination.
Exactly. Think of John Collier's painting of Lilith or Dante Gabriel Rossetti's Lady Lilith. She's still powerful,
Oh, yeah?
but there's this beauty and mystery and maybe even a little longing mixed in there.
Yeah, it's like she becomes this symbol of the forbidden, the wild, those untamed parts of ourselves that society tries to repress,
Yeah,
but they still hold a certain allure.
right. It's a reminder that what we fear often has this strange power over us.
Definitely. And that shift in how she's portrayed is really telling, don't you think?
Absolutely.
It suggests that as our understanding of the feminine evolved, so did our understanding of Lilith.
I think so.
She becomes more complex and nuanced, mirroring our own evolving relationship with female power and how it shows up.
And that complexity, that refusal to be put in a box, that's what makes her so enduring and captivating.
Yeah.
She's always challenging us to reevaluate our assumptions.
Totally. She's a mirror to our own souls, isn't she?
She is.
Reflecting back those parts of ourselves that we might fear or deny, the light and the shadow, the wildness and the beauty, that yearning for freedom and connection.
That's beautifully put. She really embodies the full spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
Doesn't let us settle for easy answers or neat categories.
And that's why her story still speaks to us all these centuries later.
Right.
She pushes us to confront the things we might normally avoid, to really embrace all of who we are, even the contradictions.
Yes.
Well said. So for our listeners who have been on this deep dive with us into Lilith's world, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that Lilith isn't just some figure from the past, you know?
Yeah.
She's very much alive in the present, in our art and literature and music, even our dreams. Her story is still evolving, still inspiring new interpretations and conversations.
Right.
So don't be afraid to engage with her myth. Ask your own questions, find your own meaning. You might be surprised by what you discover.
That's a great thought. And for those looking for a place to start, I highly recommend checking out the Lilith magazine archives.
Oh, yes.
They have tons of articles and essays and poems that explore all these different facets of her story and how she connects to modern feminist thought.
It's an amazing resource.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to continue this deep dive on your own.
Yeah.
Explore all the different faces of Lilith.
Embrace the complexities.
Let her story be a guide on your journey of self-discovery.
And who knows, you might even encounter a little magic along the way.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.